Good morning, Facebook. Hey, this is Colton here at Suzann's, and I'm back off vacation. It was nice to get away for a little bit, but it's nice to be back in the office and getting to play with pretty stuff again. So, first things first, thank you everybody for voting for us for the Inspire Coastal Bend magazine cover. We got it, and so if you didn't see the update on there, we're really excited about that. They came in a couple weeks ago, and well, I guess it was like the day 2 after on Friday, and kind of surprised us with a bunch of balloons and a big smile, and let us know that we did win the cover. So here soon we're going to have an awesome cover. We're not sure when it's going to be just yet, but sometime within the next few issues we're going to be on the cover of Inspire Coastal Bend magazine here in Corpus. So that's going to be awesome. So we appreciate all you guys' votes and supporting us. I want to thank everybody, all of our customers that we've got from the store up in Kansas. We know I had a lot of voters from up there, and a lot of our customers down here in Corpus, and we just really appreciate all you guys' support and voting for us for the Coastal Bend magazine's cover. We really appreciate that. So without further ado, we're going to talk about our next stone here. We're on episode 9 now of Family Jewels, and so we want to thank you guys for joining us. But today we're going to be talking about next month's birthstone, which is ruby, and this is in what we call the big 3. So other than diamond in the colored stones, we've got the big 3, which is emerald, ruby, and sapphire. And so these are the these are the ones that are the most popular, the most sought after, and some of the more rare stones out there, and can be some of the more vibrant ones. So ruby, awesome stone. What makes ruby
special?
Yes, what makes them special?
I think the thing that shocks most people about ruby is they come in here and everybody's got an idea of they know ruby is red, so everybody has a little different idea of what that red is, and that's kind of a big deal even in ruby, because if it gets too pink or too purple or maybe a little bit too brown, ruby is not ruby. And that sounds a little bit weird, but what happens is ruby and sapphire are actually the same mineral, the same gem. Ruby is always red, and sapphire is any color but red. So you've got purple sapphires and pink sapphires and brown sapphires.
But you'll never have a red sapphire.
You'll never have a red sapphire. So through the centuries, I guess, ruby has always been one of those things that at times has been more precious than what diamond has been. So it's kind of amazing about ruby. At times, you get into larger ones and finer ones, and especially if they're Burmese rubies, they're going to rival diamond prices.
Yep.
For the most part, rubies don't get as large as what diamonds do. You get into a 10-carat ruby, that'd be
a big stone.
Yeah, it'd be probably in a museum somewhere.
Yeah.
Or some.
Well, if it's of any quality, because you can get.
Oh yeah,
you can get big rubies, but usually they're not real pretty.
Yeah.
Those start to get into what we call massive rubies, and a lot of times it's opaque. It's got so many inclusions in it, and so it's got the red color, and it's corundum, which is the gem family of rubies and sapphires, but it doesn't have any transparency to it at all.
No sparkle.
Yeah, there's no sparkle to it. A lot of times it's not faceted. If it's going to be used, it's probably going to be cabochon. Some people carve it, which is extremely difficult to do, but makes some cool stuff. But like he's saying, as far as the 10-carat goes, we're talking about transparent stones or
gem quality.
Gem quality stones that are going to be used in jewelry. So yeah, they become a lot more rare once you get into those higher carat ranges, especially if they're high quality stones.
Yeah.
So
The other thing that's, there's kind of the Mohs scale of hardness is kind of a little pecking order. It's not equal divisions of hardness or whatever, but diamond is a 10, so it's the hardest thing known to man. In the gem world, or Mohs hardness scale, the next hardest thing is sapphire, and it's a 9.
Well, sapphire and ruby.
Sapphire and ruby.
Corundum.
But we always hear ruby on the pecking score.
Yeah, or sapphire's always on the.
Well, I thought it was ruby.
Well,
anyways,
either way, it's the
same stone. So it's a 9. The other thing that's kind of unique about ruby is that whenever, say, if we were using a torch to do repair work, there's only, well, I say only, basically 3 that you can trust to be able to use the torch on, and that's ruby, sapphire, and diamond.
Yep.
They'll take the heat and not worry about blowing out or.
Though the first time anybody repairs something with a torch and it's got ruby and sapphire in it, it always freaks people out. I know it did me the first time that I did some retipping work or something on a ring, because on sapphires it went like black when it got hot. And same way with the ruby. The ruby got really, really dark. I'm like, oh crap, I just ruined this stone. But as it cooled down, the color actually came back. And in rare cases, in very rare cases, it will sometimes actually intensify that color if you get enough heat on it for a long enough period of time.
And that's one thing about a lot of rubies have been heat treated somewhere along the line. There are
a good 90+% of them have been heated.
Very few that aren't heat treated, but it's a little bit different heat treating than what we do if you was retipping a prong.
Yeah, because this is, when they're doing the heat treatment to improve the color on rubies and sapphires, this is over an extended period of time. It's a somewhat controlled heat. I guess the ones that are doing a lot of this heat treatment, I mean, I've seen videos and pictures of some of these guys in some of these countries that I don't know how they control it, because they don't even have a thermostat. I mean, it's basically they got a few logs in a steel barrel and they've got this parcel of rough rubies sitting in like some aluminum foil over some hot coals for, they kind of guess at how long they're in there. I guess they check them to see how done they are. It's not quite like a steak, you know.
And they call it cooking them. I mean, it is kind of weird. I think there are some that have a little more control over that heat. But I've seen it where they take like a 55-gallon oil drum, and they pack it with clay or rock, and then they got this
and
fire.
Some cow dung.
That's just like a wood fire. And I don't know if they just. They show that to the jewelers just to say, you guys aren't going to be able to do it because you can't figure out how they got the bricks and stuff in there to begin with.
They could get more efficient. They could cook some ribs and stuff on there too.
Well, they may do that. We just didn't see that part.
Yeah.
Well, that's maybe a good idea.
Yeah, maybe while they're heating rubies, maybe they should be cooking at the same time. Maybe instead of Rudy's, they have Ruby's barbecue.
Yeah, Ruby's barbecue.
And so you can buy your jewelry and your barbecue at the same place.
I think that's Tequila Ruby. That's a Mexican chain or something.
No.
Okay.
But anyway, almost all rubies are heated. Actually, it's so widely done that the only time something is specified about heat treatment is when they're not heated, which is completely different from a lot of those out there. Most of the time, if there's some sort of treatment to the stones, we have to mention it.
You have to disclose it.
Yeah, you have to disclose it. You have to tell them, hey, this is a heated stone. This is a whatever, the treatment's been done. You have to tell the customer that. With rubies and sapphires, it's done so often that the only time that anything's mentioned is when it's not heated or when it's not treated, because then it becomes a much more rare stone, because most of those really intense, real vibrant colors, they don't occur naturally. So they do have, with the rubies, they're going to have a lot of brown tones to them, stuff like that. And whenever they go and cook them, it actually removes some of that color to it and actually intensifies that redness. Or in the case of sapphires, it intensifies whatever color it is that stone is. Typically, it's going to be the blues and the pinks that they're going to do that heat treatment to. And we'll talk more about that later when we cover sapphires. But with rubies, yeah, they're wanting to intensify that color. They're wanting to be a bright, vibrant red. And so that heat treatment really brings out the optimal color that stone can be. And so that's just something that they just do it. As soon as it comes out of the ground, they put it in their smoker or whatever.
And it's kind of one of those deals. Whenever Colton said we were going to do rubies, I really didn't even think about the treating process until it just got accidentally brought up here, because it's just almost known that when we look at a ruby that it's going to be heat treated.
It's just we don't even think about it. And actually, sometimes that heat treatment helps us in identification. And because something else that we haven't talked about yet, or we're getting ready to, is the synthetics. There's tons and tons of synthetic ruby out there. And something that can help us separate that, especially in that really nice, or that nicer stuff, if there's just a few inclusions or something in there, with the heat treated stuff, a lot of times, if they've got inclusions in there, they create halo fractures around the inclusions. So you get these little, like, disc flash shapes.
Like a donut almost.
Yeah, that comes out around the inclusions. You don't get that in the synthetic stuff if they've got inclusions in them. A lot of times that synthetic is so clean that there's nothing to really identify it other than some things that we'll talk about in a minute. But with the heated stuff, if there's just a tiny inclusion in there, a lot of times that inclusion is it might be a ruby inclusion, or it might be some other
garnet
material. Yeah, it could be garnet or something else that the ruby formed around. But whenever it's heated,
the expansion is different.
The expansion is different from that crystal or whatever that inclusion is in the middle of that stone than the material that's around it. And so whenever it's either during the heating process or the cooling process, it creates that fracture. And so it creates stress in the stone, and it causes it to part, to release that energy of.
But it actually doesn't actually
inclusion.
damage the stone to
No,
any degree. It's still
it doesn't.
just as tough as what it was before.
Yeah, so it doesn't cause it to be more fragile or anything like that, but it does give us an identifying characteristic that tells us that stone is for sure natural, and it also tells us that stone has been heated. So that's something else too, because if we're looking at a ruby, and we're being told, hey, this is an unheated Burmese ruby, and we look in there and we see this little halo fracture around a crystal. We're like, no, that's not. And that can mean thousands of dollars difference in just one stone. I mean, especially if we're looking like maybe a 3-carat ruby, and we're being told it's unheated Burmese ruby, but we see this halo fracture around this crystal. Yeah, we're talking thousands and thousands of dollars difference in a stone. So you could either make tons of money on it, or you could lose tons of money on something just by
tons of money.
Yeah,
cost you tons of money.
Yeah, it would make a huge difference. So we actually kind of like to see that sometimes in those stones, and so that's something that's very unique to that process and to natural stones that actually is a benefit to us being able to see that. So
the other thing is, whenever we brought this up several times, the probably premier deposit or country that produces ruby it's called what,
Myanmar or Burma.
Used to be Burma.
Yeah.
I think we still have trade sanctions against Burma.
We do.
But maybe getting close.
It's been quite a while.
But it's getting close to maybe the government or whoever's in power is starting to be a little nicer to its people or whatever.
Yeah, basically, and just kind of shorten that up real quick. I know that it doesn't have a whole lot of effect, or it doesn't really matter to you guys as much, but from our perspective of it, the nicest stuff in the world is coming from this place. But the reason that we're not getting any of it, and the vast majority of the world is not getting any of this, is because they put sanctions on Myanmar due to working conditions, because their government is basically military controlled, and the mines aren't safe, and
it's basically like living conditions, period.
Yeah, it's just, they're terrible to the people, and so
that's what we've been told.
Yeah, this is what we've been told. Some of that stuff still gets sneaked in here and there, but the drawback is with that stuff that gets sneaked in is they're not being able to sell it as Burmese, because if they sell it as Burmese, then they're probably not going to sell it. There's only a handful of countries that are actually going to let that stuff in. So it's getting sneaked in every now and then, but not very often. I would say the majority of that stuff's probably getting stockpiled for whenever those sanctions get lifted. Then all of a sudden, here comes all this really nice ruby into the marketplace. So right now, there's a lot of places that ruby comes from. It's just not that high quality, nice color stuff that
Some
comes
of it is, but it's just
Yeah.
there's not near as much production as what there is that comes out of Burma.
Yeah. So of the stuff that we're getting now, where's that good stuff coming from? Where are we getting all that really nice ruby from?
I would say, some of it is probably coming from Vietnam.
Mm-hmm.
And then, if you're talking like the really nice stuff, we're still getting, you're going to get Thailand.
Yeah. The
But
Thai
it's still
rubies
gonna
are
still going to be
fairly
cooked.
nice. Yeah.
I don't know that there's much unheated that comes out of Thailand.
Yeah. Yeah, and then even then, even though the location isn't ideal from our standpoint of where that stone's coming from, if it's unheated, it still does get a premium on that stone just because it's rare to have that.
Madagascar is.
Yeah, you get there's some nice stuff coming out of there.
But,
So-
you can have similar quality Madagascar and Burma, and there's still a considerable difference in price between the two.
Yeah, there is. And, you're paying, it's almost like a brand name, you're paying for that name, but, it's just,
Well,
I
and
guess-
the other thing is that the ruby from these different locations, they're going to have inclusions or characteristics that they can actually. There are labs out there that can document where the origin of that stone is. So
yeah, the
that's why-
different chemical impurities and stuff that are in the stone.
So that's why, like Madagascar can maybe have a ruby that looks exactly like a Burmese ruby, but that Madagascar ruby is still going to be less expensive.
Yeah.
And we've experienced that with a customer in Liberal that was looking at ruby, and
Yeah.
we had a Madagascar ruby that was actually better than some of the Burmese rubies, and it was still less expensive than what
Yeah.
the Burmese was.
Yeah, and there is still some Burmese stuff that is, I guess you could say, pre-embargo or pre-sanctioned rubies that are out there. There is some companies that kind of saw it coming, and they kind of stockpiled. And so there's still some of that stuff available if that's something that, you just have to have. You got to have a Burmese ruby. We do actually have some here in the store.
And we didn't even bring any samples over, did we?
No, we didn't. But we've got some set up. They're really cool that you can kind of check out. And that origin does play a big factor with that price. So, the main thing that we want to look at, though, in rubies, to kind of sum up that natural part, is you definitely want them red. The more red they are, the better. There's kind of a gray area in the trade. In the industry, there's some leniency towards how much is allowed on the pink side or the purple side or the brown side and still be called ruby. Some get a little more generous than others, but for the most part, in order for something to be ruby, it's got to be red. The primary color has to be red. It can have a slight modifier here and there of maybe a purple or a pink or brown, but
it doesn't
very
affect price.
little tolerance. Yes, the more red it is, the higher the price and the better that stone, or the better that we call that stone in the trade. So as far as getting that bright red stuff, it is difficult to get a true red ruby.
But I think other
it's
people
possible.
see red differently.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
even between Colton and I, we see red differently.
Yeah.
And then there's a term out there with ruby that's called pigeon blood.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I almost think we're going to have to. We've got some pigeons out here. We may have to have a donor because, what somebody comes in here and says, "Oh, that's pigeon blood," and I'm thinking, "Nah, it's got too much purple in it." And then somebody else comes in and I go, "Well, it's got too much pink in it."
Which that may be fine because we've got way too many pigeons out here anyway.
we do.
So I don't know that they would be happy about that. But
that pigeon blood is kind of a loose term.
it's kind of like people referring to a canary diamond. Well, it's like, okay, well, which one are you talking about? Are you talking about Fred the Canary or Chloe? I mean, the thing is
Are canaries always yellow?
it's true. I don't know.
Yeah.
We're not bird people, so But when people say canary yellow, it's like, okay, can you define it a little bit more? I mean,
Is it a little bit golden, or is it?
yeah, and so it's a very loose term whenever you're talking about that, and so some of this has gotten refined a little bit more. GIA, Gibological Institute of America, they have started to get a little bit better about defining those colors, and we actually have kind of a spectrum chart that defines what those colors are, and because unlike diamonds where we have a very specific color grading scale, colored stones don't have that, and they're trying to refine that so that it is a little bit more discernible between the colors and what we are to call them based on their main body color and their modifiers and how intense those modifiers are and how intense that color is. And so it hasn't quite got there yet with the definitions, but it's getting better. And so some of these loose terms like that pigeon's blood, they're starting to go a little bit more to the wayside, and people are starting to get a little bit more accurate with their terminology as far as describing that color.
Yeah, but we just had a lady in last week that asked for pigeon blood.
Yeah, I mean, it's not going to go away, but it's
I guess
better.
if you get one that's too light, we'll just tell them it's an anemic pigeon.
Yeah.
The pigeon was a little.
This is a 3-year-old pigeon. This pigeon was a smoker.
Yeah, so does that mean he's darker?
Yeah, it's a little
brown.
Yeah, it's got a little bit of a brown tint to it. Yeah.
Iron deficiency maybe or something.
Yeah. So, okay, we covered most of that. The big thing that we want to talk about, though, with rubies that I guess has a lot of people still confused, especially whenever they're talking about heirloom pieces, stuff that gets passed down from grandparents, great-grandparents, is the synthetics. Synthetics and I guess imitations and assembled stones, they've actually become a bigger issue in recent years, especially I guess with what you could call the composite or assembled stones. And
there are some people out there that are selling ruby and maybe don't know it, but it's more glass than it is ruby.
And that's actually the technical term for this is glass filled ruby, but as much as 80 to 90% of that stone is actually lead glass, a lead filled glass, and the other part is natural ruby, and the ruby's giving the glass the color. But it's basically they're taking like crushed parts of ruby or excess pieces.
I'm not sure how they're doing it.
Yeah, it's basically like broken pieces of ruby that they can't use for anything, and they're actually forming this lead glass around it and cutting it. And it's actually become a really, really big problem. Matter of fact, it's gotten to be such a big problem that this last Christmas, there was a few box stores, we're not going to name them, but there were a few box stores that were actually...
It wasn't last Christmas, Christmas before.
Well, yeah, it's been recent. That they were selling ruby pieces and selling a lot of it because it was nice looking stuff. It was reasonably priced and all this great stuff. It was a promotion pieces and all this. And come to find out, it was all glass filled. And so really, they were buying glass that had ruby fragments in it, but they were selling it as natural ruby.
Well, and they basically didn't know.
Yeah, they didn't know because they didn't have anybody that was educated enough to identify this stuff. And the other problem is there were people that were actively trying to fool people with this, and they're still doing this. We're having to keep a really close eye on this ruby issue because there are people that are actually going so far as to take this glass-filled ruby and they'll send it to somebody to have them go and cut like striations and stuff in the side of it to make it look like natural rough crystals, and putting it in parcels of rough ruby and kind of what we call salting it, so that there's a heavier parcel of rubies that they're selling and going to cutters, and these guys are cutting this stuff thinking that it's natural when it's actually glass-filled stuff, but they don't find out until they've already got it there unless they've got somebody identifying this. And it's become a big issue because people are trying to actively deceive some of these people into thinking that they've got natural ruby, and so
and part of this
they're having to watch it a little closer.
Part of this has come up, or a big part of it has come up because of the sanctions against Burma.
Yeah.
The
supply is not there.
You're talking about the largest supplier of ruby in the world has sanctions against it. So
it's basically not an active supplier. They've got it, but nobody can access it.
yeah.
And so the synthetic or
The
these
demand is
composites,
still there, so the only way they can fill that demand,
they got to put something out there.
Yeah.
And they're choosing to do this because it looks really nice and it's inexpensive. Matter of fact, we can buy this stuff for like 99 cents a carat. I mean, it's really inexpensive, cheap. For lack of a better term, it's crap. I mean, it's terrible stuff, and we're always watching for it to make sure that none of it comes through.
actually, I think the synthetic material is probably more expensive
It is.
than what the
Oh, yeah.
glass filled is.
Oh, definitely. And so synthetics, we've talked about synthetics before with other stones. And, many stones out there, especially the ones that are really valuable and high demand, they're making synthetics of. So, and we've clarified this before, and I want to do it again. Synthetics are not a different stone. They are the same material. Imitations are stones. So, for the instance of ruby, there's other red stones out there that can imitate ruby. You can have a garnet that would imitate a ruby. Anything that is a different stone other than what you're trying to show is an imitation. So, like CZ is an imitation for diamond. Moissanite is an imitation for diamond. Just like garnets or tourmalines can be an imitation for ruby, but they're not synthetics. Synthetics are the exact material that you're trying to show, but they're made in a lab instead of in the ground by Mother Nature. So you have natural. Those are stones that are being mined, pulled out of the ground, whatever. They're being naturally made by the earth. Synthetics are the exact same material, same crystal structure, same chemical makeup. Absolutely everything is identical, but it's made in a lab. What fools people a lot of the times, and what I brought up a little bit earlier, was the heirloom pieces and stuff that's getting handed down, because they've always been told in the family that, hey, this is my grandpa's ruby, he got it early 1900s, all this good stuff. Well, that's all fine and well until they find out that it's synthetic, and then they're shocked because they think synthetics are something that only came about, in the last few years. The realistic deal is the synthetics have been around a very, very long time.
Yeah.
And
back in the 1800s, and they've gotten really good at making these, especially synthetic ruby and synthetic sapphire.
Yeah. And the process is, it's quick, it's cheap, and
they can make lots of it.
They can make tons of it. And they can make it look really nice. You're not going to ever see a synthetic ruby that is crap. They always look really, really nice. And a lot of times they're big. So people think they have this great big stone, and they're like, oh, this is ruby, this is great, it's worth thousands of dollars, only to find out that it's synthetic.
The other thing that probably kind of feeds a little bit here is back when the synthetic ruby was coming out and some of it was being used in engagement rings, is the jeweler that had this and sold it, he probably didn't even know that it was synthetic ruby, because back then they probably had very few tests or equipment that could actually, or the education to distinguish between natural and synthetic. And there's a possibility that a manufacturer that maybe put the ring together with this ruby in it, it was ruby, he just didn't tell them that it was synthetic ruby.
Yeah.
So then he imparts it to the customer or the consumer that, it's ruby. Actually, it's synthetic ruby, but nobody knew, and so Grandma's engagement ring with the ruby in it was actually synthetic. But
with those synthetics and stuff, the problem, like you brought up, the problem got to be was there wasn't the education out there at the time. So the technology was way ahead of the education. So even the jewelers that were well educated didn't even know what to look for, or didn't have the equipment to identify this stuff. And it wasn't until GIA and Richard Liddycoat and some of these guys that kind of developed the equipment and the testing and really wrote the handbook on how to identify these. It wasn't until that came about that all this stuff started showing up as synthetics, because everybody just thought they had natural ruby. They thought, well, we're getting a great deal on some really nice ruby, because it was just not known. And now it is, and it does make it difficult for us sometimes, because I always hate telling, they come in and, hey, we got our grandma's ruby and we want to get it appraised, and it's like, well, I'm sorry to tell you, but it's synthetic. And, well, they got it in 1913 or something. Well, sorry, it's synthetic. And, well, how could that be? Well, it's like, well, they've been around for a very long time.
And what is it, 1880s when they first, synthetic?
Yeah, 1880s. And I'm kind of looking through our little book here. I was hoping that I had some examples of this. But most of this is done in what we call the flame fusion process. It's the least expensive, the quickest, and really the most effective way of doing it. There's a few different ways they can make that synthetic, but what's great and what I love about them doing the flame fusion process is it's also probably the easiest one to identify.
To some degree.
Yeah.
I know what you're going to bring up.
It can be difficult. There's two ways that I normally go about identifying those synthetics. The first thing I'm going to do is, well, apart from size, but the first thing I'm going to do is I'm gonna turn on my UV lamp, and I'm gonna see if that thing lights up like a Christmas tree. If it is bright, then it's a good sign that it's that flame fusion synthetic. So if it lights up like that, which some natural do,
and which naturals do?
Well, yeah.
The best stuff does. For me,
yes,
basically does the same.
It does. So that's why we go to step 2, because I don't want to miss. I don't want to miss this. Step 2 is I'm going to look under filtered light. Well, I say filtered light. I'm going to look under diffused light in the microscope. This is where the big key separation is. Ruby and sapphire occur in hexagonal patterns, so it's got corners about like this,
like 60 degree.
Yeah,
60 degrees.
That form in the crystal. And if we get these, it's a pretty clear sign that it's a natural stone. And so,
what if you get curved ones?
If you get curved ones, which is what we're always, I guess if we think we're looking at synthetic, we're happy to see these curved lines. If we think we're looking at natural stuff and we see these curved lines, we're like, oh crap, that sucks. But if we get these little curved lines, looks like a red rainbow, I guess, like a red rainbow, then we know that it's synthetic. Why? Because what we call bools, or these kind of baseball bat shaped looking things that come out, they always have these curved lines because they're in these cylindrical little what we call bools.
To some degree, the thing is turned while it's growing.
Yeah, it is. It's turned and deposited while it's growing, so that's what gives us what we call curved striae in there, and that is our big red flag. Here it is, right in your face, separation that it's synthetic.
But another thing is, the diffused light, they can still make this synthetic material where that is difficult to pick up.
Yeah.
The other thing I kind of like is there's a distinct difference between natural inclusions and synthetic inclusions. And for the most part, the synthetic material is almost flawless.
Yeah, especially that flame fusion stuff. Yeah. That stuff that's grown on that bull is really clean, so that's why we look for that curved striae. Where you do get the inclusions is the one that you won't get the curved striae, and that's what we call hydrothermal process. And it's more of basically putting what we call a seed plate, which has sapphire ruby on it.
Right, colorless.
And it's usually colorless, and it's already synthetic, and it's attracting more of that corundum to that seed plate, and it's growing out and away from it. So you don't get the curved striae in there, but you do get really cool inclusions, which happen to be platinum, because they're usually using a platinum crucible, and so you get metallic inclusions in it instead of the natural like garnet or ruby inclusions you might get in the natural stuff.
But for the most part, most of the synthetic material, unless somebody's really trying to mess with us, I guess, is that stuff is normally, the stones are larger. They're normally cut really well. A lot of natural ruby is maybe cut overseas, and
you get polishing lines and stuff like that on it.
And the stones are maybe not calibrated like the synthetic material would be. So what happens is the first red flag that comes up is a lot of times we see fairly large rubies, and and we already know that you get something in that. Actually, you get anything over 3 carats, you start to wonder. So that throws the first red flag. Then if we look at it under a microscope and it's really clean, that's almost the second red flag, because almost all ruby has something in it. And then if we do the little deal where the UV light and it lights up this bright orangey red,
that's kind of flag 3.
Flag 3, because the possibility of all 3 of those happening and it being Burmese is
extremely rare.
Slim to none. I mean, that's going to be a really expensive stone. But again, kind of like Colton said, we need 3 things that's going to tell us that it's synthetic or natural, one way or the other. And I'm going to say that what we've named off so far are only possibilities. The next thing we would look at would be the curved striae, or find the hexagonal growth pattern.
We get there's some other things out there that we kind of look for, depending on the shape of the faceted stone. Sometimes even the facet pattern can give it away, because a lot of that synthetic stuff is actually machine cut instead of hand cut, and there's certain facet patterns that lend themselves better to the machines than what it does being hand cut, and so it's really only seen in the synthetics. One of those is what we call a scissor cut, emerald cut, and the facets are shaped differently on that than what it would be on a natural stone. And a lot of times that's almost like just by sight, though we're not supposed to sight ID, and we don't. But it's kind of that, it kind of gives you that initial feeling that, hey, I know that this isn't right. And so, a lot of that gut feeling is accurate, but we always double and triple check.
There are times when we have to look at things for a while, because it's kind of on that line. If this is either going to be a really nice ruby or this is a really nice synthetic.
And so we always, and that's why we always encourage people, if you're going to have stuff checked out, or you're in the process of purchasing a nice stone like that, definitely make sure that whoever it is that you're buying that from is educated enough to discern those and tell you what those differences are. If you're coming to us, we can sit here and talk about it all day long. No, we can't. Well, I got some stuff to do. but we could. We could tell you all day long. We could show you under a microscope. We've got a microscopic camera. We can show you what those differences are and tell you what to look for. But you've got to make sure that, especially with ruby and with all the stuff that's going on in the trade right now, you've got to be certain what it is that you're buying, because though there are people out there that are actively trying to deceive you, the vast majority are not. Especially here in the States, it's pretty clear that if they're selling something, they're good about it.
Well, I'm going to say, like the internet, I don't know that there's probably much policing.
No, there's not. And I think that's probably where we see the vast majority of deception, and maybe even not even deception. It's lack of knowledge, lack of education. A lot of that stuff gets put on there just because, just like with people coming in with their grandma's ruby, they may just be 110% positive, that it's a natural ruby, because they've always.
Is that more than positive?
Yeah, that's more than positive. they're absolute certain that it's ruby. So that if they go put it on eBay or something like that, they're saying, hey, this is a ruby ring, and it's been in the family forever.
From 1900, it's over 100 years old.
And if you don't know what to look for, you're just going to assume that they're telling you the truth, that it's ruby, and so they may throw $10,000 on the thing. And you think, oh, that's a great deal, because I just went to the jewelry store and I priced this, and theirs is natural, and they told me why, and it was $30,000. Man, I'm getting a great deal on this. And then they get it and take it in and find out it's synthetic. Well, yeah, because there's nobody there that's telling them otherwise, because anybody can sell anything on eBay. I mean, there's people that sold their thoughts.
Didn't they do a commercial that said that, if it happened on eBay?
If it's on the internet, it must be true.
Yeah.
You got the guy that comes up, I'm going to be, the lady's like, well, I've got a date with a French guy. And the guy comes up and he's like, bonjour or whatever, Yeah, it's the same thing with jewelry. And we've probably had more problems with people. I guess it's not our problem, but we've had so many issues with people purchasing stuff off the internet only to get fooled. And what's bad on our end is a lot of times we're the bad guys, because we identified their mistake, and all we're doing is our jobs, but they're mad at us because they don't want to be mad at themselves for buying something that they don't want to feel bad because they got took. Yeah, they did. And so it kind of sucks in that regard, but we've got to do it. That's what our job is we're here.
Yeah, we don't want to perpetuate the story.
No, we don't, because then if we identify it as being natural, now it's on us. And if they take it somewhere else, then they're going to come back and say, hey, you told us that it was natural, not the one that they purchased it from. You told us it was natural. And well, we don't want that either. And so sometimes we have to play the bad guy here and identify that. And we've done that. We've even done that with diamonds. I think that's probably one of the bad ones that we had at the Liberal stores. We had a guy that came in and he purchased this princess cut diamond, I think is what it was, and it had been misgraded or something. I don't remember what it was. It was misrepresented in some way.
I can tell you what it was.
What was it?
Okay, so the guy comes in, and he originally didn't say a whole lot. He was wanting me to look at this diamond, and so I let him look at it under the microscope, and we kind of talked about it, and he finally loosened up, and he said, well, he bought this on the internet, didn't say who or what or where, and when he got it, it wasn't what he thought he was getting. So he had a 30-day return thing, so he sends it back to who he bought it from to get his money back, and they sent the stone back to him, which we were looking at it then, and what the deal was, they accused him of switching the diamond because they basically agreed with him that it wasn't what they had sent him.
Yeah.
But it got to be, and I just had this discussion with the customer this morning.
And then it's a he said, she said thing,
and
they're screwed.
There's been a time period, and the argument is okay, who switched?
Yeah.
I mean, who didn't send what?
Yeah.
So
who's telling the truth? And then
I basically told him, I don't see where you can defend yourself here.
No.
So he was stuck with that diamond.
Yeah. And so it all comes down to the education part. Be sure that whoever you're purchasing that stone from is educated enough to tell you what it is that you're buying and explain it. And just, if you're going into a jewelry store, brick and mortar, you're gonna have a much better chance of not having issues like that. Matter of fact, I'm gonna say you're gonna have pretty much a near 0% chance of getting taken, because it's not worth somebody's store to give up because they misrepresented something. So with the internet, it's totally different, because just like that story there,
I never would have thought of that happening.
Yeah, but it's something that people do, And so if you're wanting to make certain, the brick and mortar is never going to go away, and there's a reason for it. Yes, the internet has come a long ways, and people can buy anything on the internet, but you can also get deceived on the internet much easier than you can.
Just keep that little statement in mind. You can buy anything on the internet. Sometimes it's not necessarily what you think you're buying.
Yep, exactly.
Because we've done it. I mean, it hasn't been with gemstones, but it's been,
well, actually, it has, because no, there was a Paraiba tourmaline that supposedly a gemologist was selling me through the internet, and basically I got refunded through PayPal, and basically his online store was shut down because of misrepresentation, and because I basically sent a letter to I don't remember who it was that I bought this through, but basically that got policed a little bit. But unless everybody's doing it, there's no way of catching them, and there's too many people out there selling stuff to catch it. So that's
off the subject.
Yeah, that's off the subject. But that's pretty much the breakdown. I know it sounds like a lot, but in reality, especially here in the States, people are held accountable for what's going on, especially in the brick and mortar. And so, we're not here to deceive people. We're here to educate people. And, that's why we're doing the Family Jewels series. So it's something we want to make sure that you guys are getting what it is that you want, and that you're getting what it is that you're paying for. And like I said, we're here to educate. We're here to help. And so if you guys...
And all those people that have a birthday in July, you have a really pretty stone.
Yes, you do.
And we got some. We'd love to show you.
Yeah. So come on by Susann's. We'd love to show you some rubies and pretty much any other kind of stone that you'd like. If you have any questions, feel free to comment. Also, stop by.
I see that Gabe is on there. And he commented last time that he didn't see me with the first time I hadn't had a tie on. So I thought today that I wouldn't wear a jacket. So I just thought to really throw him, because now I got a tie on, but I don't have my jacket.
And it's got whales on it.
Yeah. Should have wore something red.
Yeah, should have. But anyway, thank you guys for joining us. If you have any questions, leave a comment. Come by the store. Give us a call. We're at 4254 South Alameda here in Corpus Christi. Or give us a call, 361-991-7565. Thank you for joining us. Again, thank you guys for voting for us for the Inspire magazine. And definitely keep your eye out. And we're going to be on the cover of that here soon. So thank you guys.
Can we do a video book or something like that?
Maybe. I don't know. We'll find out. But thank you guys, and we'll see you next week.
Thank you.